Good morning, everyone. I apologize for being late. I was having to relearn some of the tech because the interface between Zoom and Facebook has changed, which, goes back to one of the core essential coaching skills that we've talked about a little bit, and that is you got to always be adaptable. And, to a certain degree, there's always learning new tech. So I'm glad I am here. I'm eager and excited to share and talk with you this morning. This is Thursday in the Quantum Human Design Coach Forum, which means today we're going to be talking about actually using quantum human design to coach your clients as a tool in your coaching toolkit. So last week we talked about some of the mechanics of how we create. So we explored the components of the creative process. We talked about the quantum field. We talked about the conditioning field, the mental and the emotional body. We talked about how the narrative we tell about who we are translates archetypes into experience into our world. And when we are coaching clients, we have to be tackling the narrative because that's going to change the way in which your clients translate possibilities into the fulfillment of potentials. We're going to go a little bit further on that understanding today and look at that model a little bit through the lens of human design. Now, I'm going to show you a chart today that has some stuff filled out. I want to remind you of a really important thing that we don't talk a lot about in the traditional human design culture. And I think when we don't talk about this, it causes us to really not have enough information to effectively coach our clients. It also, when we teach human design, makes it more challenging to teach it. Here's the thing that I want to share with you, and this is huge in terms of reframing the way in which you think about the chart as a tool in your coaching practice. We all have all of the chart. We have all of the chart. When you listen to people talk about human design, oftentimes they're saying things, well, I don't have this gate, or I don't have this center, or I don't have this fill in the blank. But you don't not have it. We have all of it. The difference between charts is that we have definition, which is part of our soul curriculum, if you will. Anything that's colored in or defined in your chart is an energy or a theme you're going to be working with over the course of your lifespan. It's your learning ground. It's your curriculum. These represent themes that you are actively exploring, and ultimately through these explorations, you're sharing with the world. We don't talk about the conditioning of definition a lot in traditional human design, and the reality is every single part of the chart is an archetype. And if we go back to remembering what we talked about last week around archetypes, archetypes are neutral concepts. They don't have meaning until we give them meaning. And so even the definition in your chart, all the things that are colored in are archetypes. And we don't give those archetypes meanings until we have experiences in the world, and our narrative conditions those meanings. What that means is that over the course of your life, whatever's colored in, you have the option to begin to consciously bring out the highest expression of that chart. Hold on a second. I'm sure I should never have put the phone on the other side of the house. Okay, so anything that you have colored in, that definition represents an archetype that you're going to be working with over the consistent course of your life. And you always have, as you become more and more conscious, choice over how you express your definition. You're not ever a victim of your chart at all. And you always, ultimately, through awareness, have control or choice over how you're going to choose to express that chart. Now, openness, anything that you have white in the chart, anything that's white in the chart is energy that you have variability in. This is an energy that sometimes, especially in your relationships, because oftentimes we learn about our definition through our relationships. We learn about our openness through our relationships because that's energy we're receiving. Wherever you have openness is where you have variability. And under certain circumstances, those archetypes might not come into play, because those archetypes won't be part of the curriculum of a particular relationship, for example. But it's in that variability that amplification that happens in the openness, that sometimes we get confused about who we are, right? We amplify in our openness, we amplify and we experience in a variety of different ways, but usually because we're amplifying it, we start to relate to it. And when we start to relate to it and make it part of our story, then we start to get confused about who we really are, right? And then we start to have mistaken motivations and conditioning. Traditional human design only talks about the conditioning of openness. It's called the not self. And there's sort of a mythology, I think, with talking about the not self that says, well, if I have it open and it's my not self, then there are times when I don't have it at all, right? There are times when I'm not going to be experiencing it at all. Well, yes, that's true, but that doesn't mean you don't have it. It just means that in that moment, you're not actively experiencing that theme, but you always have choice and you always have the freedom through that openness to even temporarily draw on those archetypes, but you can't actively use them sustainably, but you have them. And they're never not going to have them. They're part of the human experience. So when we start talking about openness and we start talking about the chart, or we start talking about themes in the chart, and we're looking at it visually through graphs and charts and stuff, people often say to me, well, what if I don't have this colored in? Or what if I don't have this in my chart? And the reality of it is you have it all. You always have it. If you have it open, it means you have variability. If you have it defined, it means you have more consistency there, but you always have all of the chart. Okay. All right. More things binging and pinging. All right. All right. So I'm going to show you, some slides because I just want to break down the process of manifesting through human design visually for you. And I want to, again, remind you that if you're looking at your own chart or your client's charts and you're like, well, they don't have this and they don't have that, they have it. We have it. We all have it. Okay. We just either have it defined as part of our soul curriculum, or we have it open as part of our curriculum, our learning path through our relationships and our partnerships. All right. Let me get this open. All right. So this is just our quick review from last week. Last week, we talked again about your narrative, your personal story being the interface between the quantum field of infinite possibilities and your life right now. I gave you the word creativity last week. You guys, through the word exploring the word creativity, you explored some of the archetypes that you yourself hold or the meanings you have around the word creativity. I had you guys write them down. I'm just refreshing your memory here. And we explored the relationship between the meanings you have around creativity and how perhaps creativity is manifesting in your life right now. If you recall, I shared with you the image of the brain and the lights, and we talked about how when you see or are exposed to an archetype, an idea, a neutral concept, it starts a photon storm in your brain. Your brain literally creates a storm of light. That photon storm in turn creates neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters in turn create an emotional response. That emotional response in turn calibrates the heart and creates either a state of coherence or incoherence, meaning a state of positive expectation and alignment, or a state of anxiety and misalignment. And when we have anxiety and misalignment, it's going to influence what we create. When we have alignment and coherence, it's going to influence what we create. We talked about how the emotional energies calibrate the magnetic monopole, the magnetic resonance field that resides in the G center. And that capacity to use emotional energy to influence what you attract through the monopole is a brand new human experience. This is a new thing that really has emerged in the human hardwiring over the last couple of 100 years. And as we are evolving, that evolution is leading us to an expanded capacity to be more sovereign over our life path than, say, how we were, 100, maybe 400 or 500 years ago. So the chart itself is evolving, and part of what's evolving is the chart is our creative capacity, our way to create consciously and deliberately, or what I like to call quantum creativity. When we look at this chart actually outlines through the lens of human design that whole process of photon storms, neurotransmitter creation, and then programming the monopole and calibrating the heart center into a state of coherence or incoherence, depending on what kinds of emotional energies get triggered. Now, There are other factors that will influence how we create. Obviously, the spleen and the root and the sacral also are part of the process, even though they are not highlighted in this particular chart. But those three centers, to a certain degree, in essence, are going to influence time and timing. So time and timing of when is the right time to take action, when is the right time to respond, if you will, or react, or to what shows up in the outer reality is really regulated by those other three centers. The process of actually setting the tone energetically for the creative process happens through these channels and these centers. What we see is that the head and the ajna, which is really where a big chunk of who we think we are lives, the head and the ajna are influencing the quality of the neurotransmitters we create. If we think we are abundant, if we think we are powerful, if we think we are fully capable of creating what we want, if we have thought forms that are positive and allow us to expand on what we want in our lives, if our personal narrative is expansive enough, the meanings we hold are strong enough, those meanings are going to create a positive, expansive emotional frequency of energy, which is then going to harmonize and calibrate through the will center and the G, which are technically both part of the heart chakra, is going to calibrate what we program the monopole to pull into our reality. So when we're coaching our clients, the very first thing, obviously we've been talking about this in so many ways over the last couple of weeks, the very first thing you have to do is explore with your client, what are the meanings they have? If your client's coming to you and saying, I'm ready for my soulmate, I'm ready to craft a soulmate partnership, you've got to, as a coach, unpack the meanings they have around soulmate. What does that mean to them? What is their experience with them? What's in their conditioning field around the idea of soulmate? That's an essential piece. That's part of looking at the narrative that they're telling about who they are. The second thing that we have to look at is what kinds of emotional energies are they holding in relation to the meanings they have. Now, obviously, if you start shifting the meanings, you're going to start naturally shifting the emotional response to those ideas. But emotional energy is also an energy that does create, and it's an energy that we have to learn how to consciously harness and sustain. The way I like to think of emotional energy is that if you think about a flute, if you've ever played the flute or you know someone who plays the flute, you will learn to do circular breathing, right? You breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth as a way of holding the note. So sometimes when you hear these long notes flautists make, they're doing circular breathing and they're holding the note. Emotional energy is like holding that note. You want to stay in a state of emotional expectancy. Faith is another word for it that we used last week that was kind of a triggering word. You can use faith if you want. If that's a triggering word for you, just stay in a state of positive expectancy. And part of that means you've got to cultivate a life practice that supports you in sustaining that note. And you have to know if your client is emotionally defined or emotionally open, because knowing how that energy works for your client is going to give them a skill set around how to sustain that emotional note correctly, if you will, according to their design. Because an open emotional solar plexus is going to have a different strategy around maintaining emotional frequencies versus a defined solar plexus. The next thing you have to look at with your client, because this energy is flowing through the will center, which is the seat of self-worth, is how valuable does your client perceive themselves to be? If your client is struggling with self-worth, if they don't think they're worthy of receiving a soulmate, that's going to funk with the vibe, okay? That's going to make it challenging for them to allow themselves to receive the soulmate. Or they'll attract the soulmate that's going to continue to bring them lessons around self-worth over and over again until they get it. Because we're designed to be loved for who we are, and we're designed to be valuable, right? We are designed to know our value. And so sometimes in your coaching practice, to get your clients into a state of receptivity of what they really want in their life, you have to work on the value piece. Because when they value themselves enough, then they're open to really exploring the possibility of receiving everything they're programming themselves to receive. Then, of course, we have to look at the G center, the center for love and direction. And just sort of hand in hand with that self-worth, the G center is the center for lovability. Do they love themselves enough to do whatever it's going to take for them to create what they're seeking? That's another important component in the creative process. And then, of course, once you really get all of those pieces synced up, you got good meanings, you got strong, high frequency emotional energy, you got a strong sense of self worth, you love yourself. Then you see what shows up. Then you have to work with your clients on cultivating strategies for staying patient while you're waiting for the right timing. And then when it shows up, you get to explore. Is this an opportunity to redefine your personal narrative? Is this really what you want? If not, it's a great opportunity to start the process all over again, to look at, hey, this is what I want. This isn't what I wanted. I'd like to try this again. Let me create a different narrative. Let me create a different point of expansion. Let me explore how I can get more of this thing that I created that was so awesome. And then the process starts again. So, from a coaching perspective, you've got to be able to help your clients cultivate healthy mindsets. You've got to be able to teach your clients how to work consciously with emotional energy so that they can sustain and work with their emotional frequencies in a way that allows them to create. You've got to support your clients in cultivating high self-worth and a deep sense of lovability, and then teach them how to do the cosmic cha-cha-cha, if you will, how to dance with their material world in such a way that they can read that material world as a feedback loop, push against it if they don't like what they're creating, create more expansion with it if they do like what they're creating, so they can continue in this process of constant growth and change, constant exploration and expansion, so that they can maximize the true story of who they are. All right, that's my short lesson for today. Next week, I'm going to be unpacking that more in the context of self-worth. We're going to look at self-worth as part of your coaching practice, and we're going to be unpacking the idea of integrity and how integrity relates to self-worth, and how that relationship between integrity and self-worth is a coaching skill, and how to work with your clients to really enhance the connection between their integrity and their self-worth, so that you can further calibrate this creative model. All right, have a great day. Tomorrow we're going to talk about your life purpose blueprint. I know a couple of you were looking for that. I hope I'll make sure that we repost the template for you, so that tomorrow when we talk about it, we can unpack it and look at it a little bit more. I hope you all have a great day. Be well. Take care of yourselves. Bye.